Now, there's been widespread vandalism of key infrastructure around the country. This is due to criminality or frustration of communities. Eskom, Transnet, Prasa and Telkom say they lose around 7 billion rand a year in direct losses. They've gathered at the Economic Sabotage of Critical Infrastructure Forum. It's hoped it will come up with solutions to the problem. Let's discuss this with Nick Graham and from Palmer Development. Thank you very much, Mr. Graham, for your time here on eNCA. Now, we saw, for instance, quite a number of reports suggesting that the infrastructure in South Africa has basically been abandoned. At some point during the floods, I don't know if you remember, during the floods back in April in KZN, there was also the factor of, a backlog of infrastructure that was not fixed. So how bad is this problem in South Africa, really? What's important to be discussed at this forum?
I think the problem is bad and has been getting worse over time. I think the country has a long history of poor infrastructure asset management. And as you say, it does just make the problem worse. There is a general problem with prioritizing new infrastructure for sort of new initiatives and grand projects at the expense of rehabilitating, maintaining and renewing the existing infrastructure that we do have. But this has been going on for a long time.
And, when it comes to the extent of the infrastructure damage that we still need to fix in South Africa, we've heard government entities talk about billions of rands that they have to spend when it comes to the fact that their equipment is also stolen. So the problem is not only the negligence by government, right? There's also the citizens of the country who are not doing their part and acting to make sure that our infrastructure that we do have, at least, is, kept. Like when we protest, we go for schools, etc. So there's also the responsibility on us as South Africans, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think vandalism and theft is very disheartening for government at all levels. A lot of money is spent on infrastructure and it plays such a critical role. To have it stolen and damaged is taking a step backwards. But the bigger shocks can happen in other ways. If you use KZN again as an example, not just the flooding, but the looting that happened previously had similar impact on the infrastructure. And that's a major setback for a municipality in a region like that. It can be set back 5 or 10 years in development terms and cost a lot of money to repair aftershocks like that.
And talking about a lot of money, it also, I assume, has a very huge impact on our overall economy.
It does. I mean, if you put the value of the infrastructure aside, there's an exponential multiplier effect on the impact that the loss or the decommissioning of that infrastructure has. It can be in the region of 25, 30 times the value of the infrastructure, particularly if you're talking about things like energy and transport infrastructure, to a lesser extent water and telecommunications as well. But the economy suffers immediately from infrastructure loss.
And you can imagine something as simple as your Eskom, for instance. Energy equals economy, right? And if people keep sabotaging Eskom, for instance, it means, everything bad from the first citizen of the country to the very, very poorest in the country. But talk to me about the importance of a partnership between the private sector and government when it comes to fighting this. For instance, maybe getting security, private security to protect the infrastructure. I don't know if that will probably assist. Because, for instance, I've spoken to City Power, and City Power has said that part of the problem for them is also the fact that there's also the element of inside job. You know what I mean? Somebody who works at City Power, who knows exactly where these cables are and tells people where exactly to steal them.
Yeah, I think that the issue of theft and vandalism is quite a complex social issue. As you pointed out, it's got roots underlain by dissatisfaction, unemployment, poverty. So it's not a simple fix. I think in the short term, there are measures that can be taken around security and policing, but I don't think policing is ever going to be the solution, particularly given that infrastructure is often located in the most remote places, if you think about things like cell phone towers or reservoirs. So in terms of the role of the private sector, I think certainly partnerships are required, not just companies, but general citizens having sort of eyes on the ground and making that important link between infrastructure and the essential services that it provides. And as we've discussed, the link with the economy, and the fact that the damage of public infrastructure affects everybody at the end of the day.
So we're a country with many problems, right? We have issues with Eskom, Transnet and other parastatals. And of course, now we have the issue in KZN. So what would you say would be the priority project? Like, what do we fix first in terms of infrastructure in the country?
That's a tricky question. I mean, there are so many types and sectors, areas of infrastructure that need fixing. I think it's more of an issue of prioritization of types of work and investment. So prioritizing asset management and keeping what we have as opposed to building new infrastructure is one element, certainly. I think investing in making infrastructure climate resilient in order to withstand shocks of things like flooding, as we've seen in Durban, is a big one. The other area that needs a lot of focus, perhaps not investment, is the renewal of a social compact with citizens to gain trust in government and to have a sort of mutual agreement and understanding around the value of infrastructure, what the responsibilities of government are in providing it, but also the responsibilities of citizens in terms of paying and looking after for infrastructure. So I think a lot of effort needs to go into restoring that social compact.
All right, Mr. Graham, thank you very much for speaking to us and for giving us some of your expertise. That is Nick Graham from Palmer Development.